Is breastfeeding a patriarchal plot to subjugate women? Or is formula rat poison? Today we're talking about Bottled Up, How the Way We Feed Babies Has Come to Define Motherhood and Why It Shouldn't, by Suzanne Barston. I didn't expect to like this book, but I actually found myself nodding my head in agreement many times, especially with the point that being a good mother has wrongly become synonymous with breastfeeding. When we make breastfeeding the end-all be-all of childcare, we ignore many other important factors in raising a healthy and happy child. Barston does a great job deconstructing the blind spots of many activists who promote breastfeeding, often called lactivists. As Barston demonstrates, these lactivists seem to say that your child will end up being a cross between Voldemort and Donald Trump if you don't breastfeed. They do this by overstating medical and social science research findings to their benefit. As Barston explains, lactivists also ignore a number of legitimate obstacles to breastfeeding, including women who simply don't produce enough milk, babies who react poorly to their mother's milk, and the extra challenges of past sexual abuse and assault. Lactivists overlook the problem of lactation consultants who offer little to no help, and who can even be harmful by mindlessly pushing breastfeeding on struggling mothers, no matter what. Lactivists also forget that breastfeeding is actually a real skill learned by observation and communal support of other experienced women, and not something that just naturally comes to any woman who has a baby. This last point leads Barston to argue that breastfeeding may not actually be natural at all for the current environment in which we live, because we lack the proper social support mechanisms to make breastfeeding successful. I found this point provocative, although perhaps going a bit too far. It does speak to the passion with which Barston writes. Barston has done a fabulous job giving voice and validation to women who've been bullied and judged for being unable to breastfeed. Mothers and babies are being harmed by making breastfeeding a shibboleth, so this book deserves real kudos for shining a light on a real source of pain. But we do have to talk about a couple blind spots in this book. The first blind spot is huge. It's gigantic. It's bigger than a Titanosaurus on steroids. It's also an almost universal blind spot for the Western worldview, so I'm not going to be too hard on Barston. So what's this first blind spot? Separating breastfeeding from gestation and birth. Breastfeeding is profoundly influenced by the actual birthing experience, which of course is influenced by the mother's overall health. The more you intervene in a birth, the bigger the risk you run that the baby is going to struggle to nurse. Doctors pile on Pitocin, epidurals, forced fasting, and all the other procedures common to a regular hospital birth, and then they get upset when the mother somehow struggles to breastfeed. If Barston had tackled the links between nutrition, birthing interventions, and breastfeeding difficulty, she could have made a much stronger case about the unfair position of new mothers. The medical system that made breastfeeding so hard for these women is now shaming them because they're not breastfeeding, which speaks to the sociopathic nature of Western medicine. And here's blind spot number 2, Barston's characterization of formula companies. The book does recognize that formula companies have acted in shady ways in the past, most notably Nestle's actions in the developing world in the 1970s. Nestle was criticized for aggressively promoting formula as better than breast milk, contributing to the deaths of countless children through contaminated water and malnutrition, in part because mothers watered down formula because they couldn't afford to pay for enough formula. But Barston essentially argues that these companies do not act in this manner today, and that these companies have been unnecessarily vilified recently because lactivist zealots see any aspect of formula promotion as machinations of corporate greed. Here Barston is wrong. As The Guardian reports, as recently as 2018, formula companies were giving Filipino health professionals free trips to conferences, gambling chips, meals, and tickets to shows in an effort to promote formula feeding. The poorest have been hardest hit, some spending up to 3/4 of their income on formula, as well as having feeding size in order to stretch supplies. Mothers report going without food in order to pay for the formula, and if limited access to clean water has meant many children end up with other health problems. In Brazil, Nestle reportedly pressured the Brazilian government to not support a World Health Organization effort to change breastfeeding recommendations from 4 to 6 months to 6 months. Additionally, packaged food companies push their products through local representatives to replace traditional foods. The labels of vitamins and nutrients make packaged foods seem healthier. This includes formula. So what's Barston's ultimate solution? Don't judge and support moms with whatever breastfeeding decisions they make. Ultimately, I can't fully support this approach. It is really alluring to destigmatize formula feeding because we feel for all those mothers struggling with the judgmental looks of family, friends, and even total strangers. No new mother needs to deal with that kind of garbage. We should always be kind. But if we just normalize formula feeding without calling out the depraved and extractive actions of many individuals and corporations, then we are not actually kind. We should get angry when we see a mother formula feeding. Not with the mother, but with those responsible. Greedy multinationals for sure, but also a medical establishment mired in reductive minutia, hollowed out community networks, and even our own lifestyles. The solution to breastfeeding difficulties is not to care less. It's to care more. It's to care more about mothers before, during, and after labor. And it's to care enough that we don't leave them alone in the cold embrace of a formula container as a surrogate for community. Despite these caveats, I would really recommend this book. Bottled Up is very thought-provoking, and Barston makes a convincing case that we're doing real damage to women by making breastfeeding the litmus test of motherhood. These women and babies deserve better. As always, thanks for watching. You can find links for the topics discussed in this video below. Make sure to subscribe, like the video, and comment about how amazing I am, and we'll catch you around on the next video.